All right, let's try that again. My name is Dan, and thanks for joining me today. We're going over the very basics of drawing, and we hope these videos are helpful for you. Yesterday, we talked about using two-dimensional shapes to as our building blocks to build, and we're going to transition into three-dimensional shapes. But let's go do a little quick review. We talked about having just some basic shapes to work with. So we've got our square and a rectangle, triangle, oval, and circle. And we use these to build. We did this also where we built a character just using basic shapes. There's a half circle for the ears. Basic shapes, that's all that is. And now we're gonna move in a different direction. And I'm going to show you something that you probably did in grade school at some point when learning how to draw a cube. You drew a square, and then you put another square on top of it, and then you connected those corners, creating a cube. And that's a fine way to create a cube. It is not, let me get this straight here. Thank you. That's not exactly how you would draw. That doesn't have true perspective, but for today, it's fine. That is a cube. This is called isometric drawing. I believe that's the name. If I'm wrong, you can let me know. But the idea is that we're just connecting these basic shapes with these 45-degree angled lines. So again, a true cube, these lines would not be parallel. They would move in like that, and it would look a little more like that, but that's fine. We're just learning. We're just kind of taking that next step to three dimension. So that's fine. If we were going to draw a rectangular solid, we would start with a rectangle. And the type of drawing here, the isometric drawing, this is what they use in drafting programs like CAD. It's not supposed to represent true perspective. It's just supposed to give the idea that there's some dimension there. Okay, so let's look at some other shapes. We can do, well, let's do a quick review also with drawing a circle. We said that we could have a square, connect the corners, and then that way I know where the middle of the square is. And I can have a vertical and a horizontal. And now I'm able to draw some curved lines here, completing the circle. And then we can also draw our rectangle laying down. So now it looks like the top of a table. And I can still find the center by crisscrossing and meeting those corners. And now I can also draw a circle on top of that. And now I'm just going to be careful to curve it in such a way. And now really basically I'm drawing an oval, but it fits inside of that square that we drew earlier. Now I've given the illusion that it's a flat circle. So it's a circle laying down. And if we wanted to draw a cylinder, all we would need to do is draw an oval on top, or you could use that same method, connect them, and we're good. If this is not supposed to be a transparent cylinder, then we would just need to get rid of this top line here, and everything would be just fine. So we've got our cylinder that way. We could also, let us get another drawing here. We could also here, let's switch this out here. Okay. I'm going to draw in a different color here. We could start with an oval. We could make a smaller oval. I'm going to say that this is the middle of that oval. And we're going to make a line going straight up. And then instead of, this will be the center of the new oval. It's not the same size, which is fine. It just depends on what shape you're creating. So there's a new variation, and that could be a bell or whatever. We could also really make that top one so small that it's just a point, and then we connect them, and we just created a cone. And I would just darken the bottom part of that oval, and we created a cone. We could add some shading to it, and it would look a little more like a cone. All right, so once you start knowing how to draw these shapes, you really exponentially increase what you can do. You have many more options because you have more shapes to work with. All right, let's talk about a circle versus a sphere. One way to make this look more like a sphere is to add some shading, and we'll get into shading on another day, but that would certainly be one way to do it. We'll just add a little bit there, and it starts to read already like a three-dimensional shape. Another thing that we can do is imagine that we're wrapping a string around the middle of it, just like the equator. And it's going to wrap around. If we go straight across, that flattens it. That's a two-dimensional circle. This looks a little more three-dimensional. We can add a line this way. Again, we're pretending that we have a string. And let's change the opacity there. Okay, oh, that's a mess. What did I do? Let's fix that. We're getting there. Oh, I know what I need to do. Okay, we need another layer. More layers, please. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now we've got, I'm going to go back to this layer just for a moment. I can draw a line. No. There we go. I can draw a line this way. So this curved line, if I was looking straight on the sphere, it very well may look like this. Okay, and I can have an oval here just below the equator. We can make it a smiley face. Now, if I want to rotate the face, so now the face is looking in this direction, here's what we'll do. I'm going to add that oval just below there. Add another layer. There we go. Okay, so now I can add an oval there. I can add the eyes just like I did here, and but I'm going to think about where I'm placing them because they need to be the right distance from each other. Okay, so but this is now my new guideline, not this straight line, but the curved line is my guideline. I'll make them just a little bit bigger, and then this mouth is symmetrical. So I'm going to think about that as I make the mouth. And for the ears, we can imagine that there's another guideline here. If you're looking down on the sphere and there was quarters, that's where I would place my ear. And then the other ear would go on the other side there. So now I'm creating a face with a sphere, and it has dimension. And it looks like it's looking off to the side. All right, let's do, we'll do one more. And I want you to think of, here, let's get another couple layers here. I just go right through these layers, don't I? Let's add another one. New layer. Okay. Good. Okay. So going again back, I'm going to switch it up a little bit with some colors here. Going back to this square, we find the middle, vertical, horizontal. We've got our circle. Now we're going to imagine that this is a block of wood. So what I'm going to do is we've got our line, and I'm going to have that block of wood go off to the side. And I'm not terribly worried about perspective lines, basically just drawing a parallelogram right here. Okay, now we're going to add those isometric lines, which they're all going to be at the same, they're all parallel. That's parallel to that, that's parallel to that. We're going to do that here on this model. And just for fun, we'll put in those back lines, change the color just a little bit. That's better here. Getting a little messy. There we go. That's good. Okay. I'm just going to mute that just a little bit in the back so we don't get too confused. Okay, good. Okay, so now we're going to do that again. We're going to cross here. We've got our circle. But now we're going to imagine that we're cutting this circle out of the wood. This is a block of wood. We're cutting it out. This is the old edge, but now we have a new edge. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to do before we get too much further. I'm going to draw a circle on the back as well. Because obviously if there's a blade, if we have a skill saw and it's going through the wood, it's going to cut a circle on the other side as well. Okay, so now we're going to go back, and instead of this old edge here, the new edge is right there. We've got a new edge right here. I'm going to darken this because this is the top of the circle, and then the back of the circle is going to go over here. And look, we just cut out a cylinder from the block of wood. I'll just throw a few lines in there for shading just to make that point clear. And we could sort of mute out all those guidelines, and it'll just become a little more clear as to what we're doing here. But we just cut this out of we're imagining that we cut it out of a block of wood. All right, we're gonna do one more. And let's see here, let's erase this. There we go. All right, we're gonna do one more. And this time we're gonna cut out something a little more complex. We've got our block of wood here. And we're going to cut out, well, first we'll divide it. We're going to divide the front into thirds. Okay? And we're going to draw an oval, another oval, two more. We're creating a gingerbread figure. Okay, now we need to cut this gingerbread figure out of the wood, and let's get something color that looks kind of gingerbready. That works. I'm gonna add another layer. Okay, so now we're gonna darken in the gingerbread character. There we go. Now, again, this is the old edge of the block of wood. So we're cutting now. So this cut is going to go all the way to the back. It's going to go here. And as you can see, we're going to copy this curved line. The top of the head is going to go right here. Now you can already see, if we were to put a line here, that this is a type of cylinder. Okay, and we're going to continue. We do the same thing over here. This curved line is going to go right there. Same for the foot. This line is going to go about here. And if I wanted to make this, if I thought, wow, that's pretty thick, well, that's fine. We can trim it down. We'll trim it right here. There we go. That's a little more accurate. And then we can just cut that out, the part that we don't want. That made it just a little more thin for our gingerbread character. Need to round that top out part a little better. There we go. There we go. There's our gingerbread character. We'll just throw a little bit of shading in there just to help make the point even more that this is a three-dimensional character. And we use that starting with our two-dimensional shapes. And then we added some guidelines and made it a little more thick. And we've got our gingerbread character. So let's just do a few more in closing. We could have a star. And we'll add those dimension lines there. It just gives you you get many more options, I should say, when you can draw three-dimensional. You get more options. Here's another exercise that's a lot of fun. Just take a letter and make sure it's nice and two-dimensional, nice and thick, and then add those lines. And again, this is a great exercise. You can do your whole name this way, and it's a good, I guess we would go like this. It's just a great way to start to visualize things. You know, a lot of drawing is about thinking. And when you can start thinking three-dimensional. It just makes the drawing that much easier. All right, I hope that makes sense. I hope you had fun drawing today. Make sure you draw me in the next video. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here for you. And I'll be sure to address any questions you have in my next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.